Hello to all Johnson Control employees around the world. I'm your host Keith Blastland, and I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our groundbreaking podcast that is reshaping the realm of organisational change management. Boy, I hope you are all ready to embark on an exciting journey with one of its true powerhouses, ProSci. Founded in 1994, ProSci has become a global leader in building effective change management capabilities. With over 25 years of pioneering research and a strong focus on the human side of change, ProSci works in over 70 countries and collaborates with 80% of the Fortune 100 companies, helping organizations effectively manage change and achieve remarkable results. We at Johnson Controls are proud to partner with ProSci. And speaking of remarkable, I am absolutely thrilled to introduce a true titan in the field of organizational change management, Tim Creasy. As the Chief Innovation Officer at ProSci, Tim brings 24 years of unparalleled expertise to the forefront. He played a key role in the industry by editing the 2007 Best Practices in Change Management study, which established the gold standard for excellence. Wow. Tim is not just a leader, he's a trailblazer, co-authoring the influential book Change Management, The People Side of Change, and spearheading initiatives like the Change Management Return on Investment model and the ProSci portal, a virtual hub designed for change practitioners to thrive. Gosh, with over 300 webinars under his belt and presentations at countless prestigious conferences, Tim captivates audiences across the globe. Today, we are incredibly fortunate to have him on the podcast to share his wealth of knowledge and insights. Hi, Tim, and welcome to the Johnson Controls Organizational Change Management podcast. Tim, would you like to just introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, Keith, thank you very much. That was a lot of an introduction already. It's my honor to serve change practitioners around the world and like the folks at Johnson Controls to really step into the face of change and tackle it in a way that makes it feel like it's doable. On the personal front, I have two boys, 16 and 14, a big lover of the Marvel universe, and I fell deep into an AI hole over the last couple of years and come out every once in a while. But it's an honor to be here, and thank you for having me.
You're welcome, sir. I'm also joined by my co-host, Nicole Cohen, Senior Change Management within our Organizational Effectiveness team. Hi, Nicole, and great to see you. I cannot believe this. Just 24 hours ago, you are at our global headquarters in Milwaukee. And now, after flying home to Nice in France, probably having a brief, heartfelt reunion with your family, you're jumping on and jumping right into this podcast. That's dedication, and it's truly remarkable. So thank you, Nicole. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, yes, thank you. Wonderful to see you both. I am just truly honored to be here. I have to say, Keith, you provided a really wonderful introduction of Tim, but I just want to put it into context for our audience and maybe those who are new to change management. Tim Creasy is to ProSci what Phil Jackson is to basketball coaching. Let's just set that clear. Okay, and if you're not a sports fan, I would say the next person I think of in the tech world, for example, is Sheryl Sandberg and what she did at Facebook or Meta. So it's about being that visionary leader who has profoundly influenced his domain and continues to do so with relentless creativity and research and humanity. That's important to note. So I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great, Nicole. So let's dive into the first topic. Tim, over the years, we've seen significant shifts in organizational change management practices. In your view, what are the most critical changes that you have seen in the past decade, and how have those shifts influenced the ways organizations are change or approach change today?
Yeah, very good, Keith. There's been a tremendous amount of change in this discipline of change management, especially in the last decade. But if you'd allow me, I'd go a little bit further back. I had the honor of doing a keynote for ACMP Sweden this year to celebrate their 10-year. And we did a little bit of a kind of the history and evolution of change management. And I sort of talk about three eras that are going to lead us up to this last decade. So era one, I kind of call the foundations, like before 1990. And it was really around understanding human beings and how human systems understood and experienced change, right? So Kurt Lewin, Beckert, Bridges, Arnold van Gennep, like laid the foundation by understanding rites of passage. But that was the foundational phase. During the 90s, it kind of got on the radar, right? The notion that the people side of organizational change mattered and was important started to become part of the conversation in the lexicon. So Todd Jick and Daryl Connor and Janine LaMarche and John Cotter, even Spencer Johnson and his Who Moved My Cheese, all starts to move humans and how humans experience change into an organizational setting, into an organizational change dynamics. And then my third era I called formalization. And this is back in about 2015 when I started giving this talk, about 10 years ago. And I talked about 2000 to 2015 was really around formalization of processes and tools and job roles. We saw change management structures and CMOs and communities of practice. We brought rhyme and reason to addressing the people side of change within our organizations. And so that was kind of that third era, 2000 to 2015-ish. So then what happens over the last 10 years? I kind of give two answers, both made up of 5-letter words. The first one is AGILE, agile, and the second one is COVID, a global pandemic. And I think those two things really impacted change and how change was managed in organizations over the last 10 years. So agile is that first piece, and I think you've got uppercase A, agile, a system and approach to do software development more iteratively, but you also have lowercase a, agile. How do we build durability, resilience into the fabric of the organization? And I think those are really part and parcel to these last 10 years. A democratization of change management and a really growing organizational change muscle, in addition to becoming more iterative and adaptive in how we do change. And then I think March 2020, we all, a shared global experience. And one of my favorite analogies was the same storm, different boats, right? This wasn't a shared exact experience, but organizationally and societally, our organizations had some really significant shifts to how things were done that I think still are manifesting in organizations and organizational change today. So things like the involuntary digital transformation. Right? How long did tech leaders talk about digital transformation? And then we did it in 1, 2, 3, 4 days. We stepped into the involuntary, the instantaneous remote work experience. And I think one of the other, from a change practitioner perspective, I talk about the paradoxical humanity that got pumped into the organizational connective tissue. And if you remember back in 2017, there was this BBC video. It was a BBC newsman, and he was giving presenting from his home office, and the door opened a little bit in the back, and a toddler comes walking into the room. Do you remember this video? Yeah. And then behind them comes a little sibling on the little scooter, and partner comes army crawling in to rescue. And the thing went viral, and we were beside ourselves, right? That a child would be on screen during a business thing. That is so different than it is today, right? Where if you have a colleague whose cat regularly makes an appearance on the screen and they don't make an appearance, you're like, what's happening with Whiskers today, right? Like, and so I think there's like these, there are a bunch of emergent capabilities and expectations within the wiring of organizations that we're not even fully aware yet about what they mean in terms of how we engage and interact with one another. And so I think those last 5-10 years, Agile and COVID, set the stage for new organizational capabilities and expectations that we're going to be navigating as we go forward.
Oh my gosh, Tim. I remember Friday being informed by my company, as of now, everybody's working from home. And while we traveled, around the world on business, that typically meant still going into an office environment. So the fact that you assumed straight away that you'd be able to work from home seamlessly starting Monday morning was a shocking eye-opener to, I guess, a lot of people, because to your point, yes, we knew how to use Teams and remote work, but it was always remote work, but I'm going in an office. And it did change people's behaviors, and it took time. But thank you for sharing that insight. Nicole, over to you.
Yeah, so right from this discussion, in an era where change is constant, as we see, so whether it's accelerated by technology or global events, in fact, how would you say, how can change practitioners adapt their strategies to not only manage change effectively, but also foster really that solid culture of continuous improvement and innovation within their organizations?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the realities that fell out of that COVID experience, right? Was that success horizons went from 5 years to 5 seconds or 5 hours to maybe 5 quarters. And so as organizations, I think iterative and adaptive became the necessity for how we started to better understand how do we sense what's going on and best effectively react and respond to what it is we have coming at us. And so that notion that change is the expectation, not the exception, I think we all actually lived that. It became more than just a mantra. I have one of my favorite keynotes is called Organizational Agility as a Strategic Imperative. Organizational agility as a strategic imperative. I gave it for the first time in October 2014. And I know because I used the Back to the Future, in Back to the Future 2, where he jumps to the future, I actually used the placard because he was jumping to like a week from within when I delivered this keynote. And back then we talked about why it was so important to build organizational muscle, to be tuned in and to be ready to react and respond and rapidly redeploy energy and focus and capability and resource across the organization. All of those things I think are only getting more important given the speed at which change is starting to happen today. And then I think one of the other things that we can do in this state of continuous change and a pace that starts to feel almost unmanageable is I put together during the pandemic what I called my 12-pack of alignment hacks. So they were these little hacks, ways to get on the same page with people quicker, because I was like, there is no other time than now that it's important for us to get on the same page quicker. And one of my very first alignment hack is called To What End? To what end? And my team hears this more than anything. To what end? To what end? It's essentially a request to describe the outcome that we're attempting to achieve. And for me, when we're talking about continuous change and organizational pace, the ability to quickly align to the flag on the horizon and say, hey, Nicole, Keith, Tim, do y'all look at that same flag on the horizon? Are we all looking at the exact, we both have defined the finish line, what we're trying to get to, and all three of us have a shared understanding of to what end, then we can empower the heck out of the team and create massive movements and be ready to respond to this rapid pace of change. Blanchard has this great quote. The shortened version is empowerment without alignment only amplifies the chaos. Empowerment without alignment only amplifies the chaos. And so getting clear on why we're here, what is the finish line, what's the flag we are all charging at, I think that's one of the most critical steps for folks to navigate the pace of change that we're dealing with today.
Wonderful. It's so interesting. It's critical because companies have to stay on the market and be competitive. To do that themselves as a company, they have to be agile, but who really runs the company? It's the people inside. And so the internal alignment and agility really needs to match what the exterior is trying to do and trying to get at in terms of strategy. I love the quote you gave. I just came back from a trip where we came together as a team. We're on the global deployment, impacting thousands of people across 8 countries, and we're a team, and it's on a deadline 1 year, and there's tons of overlapping work, and everybody has to not spin into that chaos. Exactly. So we came together and became a very high-performing team and created that alignment. But a lot of work around agility and understanding that overlap and how to maneuver. So wonderful. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tim, I've got to obviously talk AI. So with the rapid advancement in artificial intelligence, what opportunities and challenges do you foresee for organizational change management? And how might AI tools enhance or complicate the change management process?
Yeah, great. So AI is where I spend all of my time pretty much. And so we're going to tease this out in a couple of different ways. When I think about the impact of AI on the change practitioner and the change community, and I love alliteration, but I'm going to talk about context, content, and our craft. So context, what is the change happening within and around us inside of our organization as this AI transformation is happening? Because Johnson Controls and every organization on the planet has AI transformation ahead of it. So that's the context piece. Content is really like when am I as a change practitioner stepping in to support changes that are inherent, that are bringing AI solutions to the organization, right? Maybe I'm brought alongside a rollout of Copilot, or I'm brought into a research team who is building a homegrown AI solution, and I'm there to help support the adoption and usage of that. So as change practitioners, we're going to be brought in to help drive the adoption and usage of AI change. That's the content piece. And then the craft piece, which is where we did research a couple years ago, was how are change practitioners effectively integrating AI into the way they do their work so that they can do their work at higher quality, in less time, with less mental strain, and with more enjoyment. And so those are kind of the three buckets: context, content, and craft. Do you all want to pick which one we talk about first, or do we want to kind of...
Oh, you just go straight into it.
All right, so we'll do context. The kind of change that AI is bringing into organizations. Johnson Controls is an example, right? And we just did a bunch of research it actually just ended up in Research Hub yesterday or today, I think. So it's now accessible in Research Hub. We looked at individual, team, and organizational adoption of AI. Because individuals will have to figure out how to integrate AI into their work, bring that AI intern to the table, invite that collaborative relationship so that they can most effectively do the bundle of tasks that is their job. Teams are integrating AI to more effectively collaborate and communicate and to solve problems in new ways or solve problems we've never been able to solve before. And I don't mean necessarily just intact teams, right? It could be a project team. It could be a function. It could be these 1,000 folks, Nicole, y'all just got together. But it's how does that team solve problems in a new way with this new capability that we've unleashed? And then enterprise-wide, how does the enterprise start to set the direction to be an AI-adept workforce and to reimagine the value and services we create as an organization in this new AI-enabled world that we're all going to be navigating and stepping into. So that's kind of the context in terms of how we start to describe the levels of AI adoption that are happening inside of organizations. And again, tons of fascinating new research that just dropped around that space. So
I absolutely love AI. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I share with my team members is we must provide and present value. What is the value proposition of change management? And I see AI as an opportunity to help drive that value. And of course, Johnson Controls, we are all around sustainability, data centers, smart buildings, where AI is now playing a major part in that with huge opportunities. So it couldn't be more exciting and real for us at Johnson Controls. But I'll hand back to Nicole now.
Sure. So thinking about the future, what?
Hold on real quick.
Go ahead.
No, go tease for it. Out. I want to make sure that we do tease out the content and the craft on the AI front.
I was curious about craft. Go for it.
Okay. So yeah, in terms of like the bucket of craft, the intersection of how AI impacts the work we do as practitioners, we did a body of research there. The top 5 that were identified, and I think these are pretty universal across professional workers, is content support, communication support, content creation, strategy and planning, automation and efficiency, and data analysis. And it doesn't surprise me that communication support, content creation show up at the top, because AI strings words together to make sense. And so it's a logical first step for us to lean into. I think there's really interesting untapped potential when we start to talk about strategy and planning, automation and efficiency, data analysis, the ability to extract sentiment around a change out of something beyond a 0 to 1, 1 through 5 scale, because we're able to pick up meaning in the strings of words that people are putting together when they're interacting with us, when they respond to a particular open-ended question. So I think those are kind of the activities of the change practitioner where we're starting to see AI brought to life. The other frame that I want to make sure to give your audience is what I call my AI integration framework. And so I start by thinking about, a job or a set of tasks. It's kind of like a bundle of activities. Some of those activities are exposure to AI impact or opportunity disruption. Some of them aren't. But being able to start to think about that is a really big key step forward. And so the way I take this AI integration framework, and it's my favorite over coffee or over beer conversation, is take all the chunk of your work that you do, Nicole. We're going to bucket it out into 3 buckets. The first bucket we're going to call human exclusive tasks. That's kind of my work. That's the part of your work that always has a human being. It's got humanity in it. It's probably why you're doing this job in the first place. There's a bucket called AI automation potential, where at some point the bot could execute this body of work completely for you. And I tell people, don't get hung up on that, because that's farther out. The middle is where the magic lies, and that's the AI collaboration opportunities. Where can you do the work that you're already doing at a higher quality, in less time, with less mental strain, and with more enjoyment than you would have otherwise? And so we can start to think about, and I've built an agent where you can actually go in and put any job, and it'll bucket it out into these 3 classifications. Here's what the my work is, here's the for me work, and here's with me work. But if you can think about a week of work you do, a month of work you do, and what of it is my work, what of it's with me work, and what of it's for me work, you've started to change the relationship that you have with AI out of the gate by thinking about how you're going to unpack and bring that collaborator to the table with you, as opposed to be fearful of what, when it's going to take over. So
I think, and Nicole, I'll let you jump in, but I think, to your point, the initial reaction of AI is, oh, it's going to take my job, or it's going to replace this. But to your point about making it work enjoyable, sort of achieving more, raising that expectation and delivering is like, oh my gosh, wow. Because it's not doing the work for you. It's actually enhancing and enriching what you do yourself. And I use AI every day, and I'll often look at it and bang my head and think, wow, thank you for enriching what I do. Nicole?
Yeah, I was just going to say, creating this bucket, the 3 bucket list, what it does is that it removes the fear out of the equation, and it gets you to creatively think about how you can use it. So it's just pragmatic, and I mean, obviously you're innovation, so innovation comes from creativity, but it's a great way to get people thinking and get them triggered. Because as you were listing it, I started thinking of 10 different ways where I could build efficiencies in what I do. So wonderful, thank you.
And I think, Nicole, part of that fear, people talk about keeping the human in the loop in AI as a way to make sure, make sure that we're not falling asleep at the wheel. One of the ways we can put a human at the loop is designing the loop from the beginning. Like, we are the ones in control of designing our relationship with AI by how we're bringing it to the table to help us. And that takes that fear down tremendously. There's, a tagline out there, what's AI going to do for you? And I'm like, we're asking the question backwards. The right way to ask the question is, what are you going to do with AI? What problem are you trying to solve today that you're having a hard time with? I was working with a client, they're rolling out an internal AI tool, and he said, here's the best way I've found to get anybody into it. I sit down next to him and say, what problem has you stumped right now?
So you go straight into the practical. Yeah.
right into it, because you can show them use cases and those things are probably interesting and probably relatable. But if you can sit down next to them and say, what problem are you trying to solve right now? Let's open it up and just tell it about it and let's watch it engage and solve that problem with us. You have solved a real-time, relevant problem for that person. And so that's, I think, I'm going to start to play with that. How powerful. I published an article just this week on LinkedIn about the difference between use cases and YOU use cases.
I saw that.
Like, because a use case is a general way to accomplish something. A use case for Keith is how Keith is accomplishing an aspiration or a challenge in a new way with this new capability. And so, yeah, a fun little play, but the paradigm shift I think is critical when we talk about generative AI and the power it brings and unleashes relative to something like a CRM or an ERP and the power that that unleashes within the organization, right?
Wonderful. What would you say are some of the next kind of emerging trends that would impact or shape the landscape of organizational change management in, say, the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, great. What do we have kind of on the horizon? And when I did that ACMP Sweden 10-year anniversary, I did a look back and then we also did a bit of a look forward. And so one of the pieces of looking forward I like to do is out of one of the research studies we did, which was around top contributors to success in a post-pandemic world. And so ProSci was founded by an engineer, an insatiably curious engineer who saw a stack of successful projects over here and a stack of unsuccessful ones over here and said, what's the difference? Like, what's accounting for the difference between those successful ones and those unsuccessful ones? And that's the genesis of what started ProSci. And all of the methodology and learning about change management was in answer to that question. About 2022, we conducted a research study where we said we're standing in a different place. This post-pandemic world, given the new capabilities, new expectations, all the different things that we know are going on in organizations, what are the contributors to this success pile in the future different to the ones today? Like, what are those emerging contributors to success given the new landscape we're all navigating? And there's top 10 that came out of the research. I'm going to give you the top 5 here just because I think they're critically important. Number 1 was involvement and engagement. Not just getting people to participate in building solutions, but true involvement and engagement of people in identifying, solving, and building solutions for what we have in front of us as an organization. Number 2 is around communication adaptations. That communication is so different today than it was. And that's not just post-pandemic. Twitter had a role in that, right? 140 characters. There's a whole bunch of things that have impacted how people expect to and process communication. And it's all been amplified by the digital transformation. And so how we figure out how to most effectively communicate, that's going to have to adapt. The third on the list was the evolutions in the discipline of change management. And that's how do we as practitioners get more iterative and adaptive, work with and through the others who we know are critical for change to be successful, and get comfortable with chicken scratches and pencil instead of pen and concrete, because that's how a lot of times we built a lot of our stuff. Fourth is flexibility and agility. And so that lowercase a agile, the ability to adapt, sense what's coming, effectively adapt a response, and then deploy that response. And that become a core competency in the organization. And then the fifth one was digital transformation. And again, we did this study in 2022, a little before a lot of the real digital transformation that we're starting to watch happen is happening. And so those are those top contributors of the stack of successful change in the future, as opposed to the ones that are unsuccessful. In terms of the top trend in the discipline of change management, it was a continued convergence of people, strategy, and culture. And those are the people side of the organization becomes inseparable from the organization. And so I think that's kind of a continued interesting trend. And then I think AI is going to be a fascinating place to be playing. And one of the things I'm noodling on right now, and this is like my top of mind thing I'm trying to figure out, is we know we have we're experiencing multi-generational workforces. There's multi-AI maturity happening across organizations in very, very distinct ways. And the gap is widening incredibly fast, and the gap is getting wider and wider, right? From the folks that still haven't yet once put a single prompt into generative AI to the folks that are building their own homegrown agents, executing the most critical tasks and freeing up their time to do real strategic important work. So within organizations, we're seeing this like, and I'm not sure what it means yet. I'm just starting to pick up or feel like this continued separation of those that are at the front and those that are still waiting. And the farther that gap gets, it was identified in the research we did, the potential to further divide the paper and pencil practitioners from those who have leaned in. And that wedge might be getting even broader in organizations given the speed at which AI is developing right now. I have no, what are you seeing these different levels
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what it makes me think is we may have a responsibility as a company to upskill our employees, at the same level, provide courses and opportunities to level set. Yeah.
It came out of the research, this AI adoption research we just did, that democratization of AI literacy and knowledge is going to be really important, because what AI is doing is essentially starting to democratize access to digital information. And we do need to be really cognizant of, and I think one of the responsibilities of leaders, you're getting two of my things I'm trying to noodle on and figure out right now. So that was the first. The second is this notion of a leader telling you, don't be afraid of that, is very different than a leader saying, don't be afraid of that because of this.
Yeah.
And I think our leaders are coming up a little bit short on filling it. And I don't mean at Johnson Controls. Collectively, leaders are trying to reduce the fear by saying, don't be afraid of that, without starting to articulate and paint a picture of the vision of what it means because. And so I've have a couple of clients where they've done a really nice job of, we are freeing you up to spend your time on the most critical, strategic, and human-inducing work that you do, right? Which becomes a really powerful message when we start to take that forward, as opposed to, don't be afraid of AI, we're not going to replace jobs. That's not enough if you can't fill in the blank of what you're going to do and what we're going to do as an organization, because we've unleashed and unlocked this new capability. So that one's just getting started.
I do have to say, when I speak to my colleagues across different industries, Johnson Controls be ahead of the game on AI usage and literacy within the company. So it's also part of our value proposition externally to our clients. So it's fitting that we even have a bot, and he's very cute. So
that's been my experience working with y'all, is that y'all are leaning out in front of uncorking what this enables us to do, as opposed to cowering from what it might mean, right? So,
right.
We could spend all day, and I'd love to spend all day, Tim, with you, and I'm sure Nicole would. But I'm going to ask Nicole to start bringing us home here.
Well, yes, sadly, but thank you so much for joining us on our podcast, Navigating Change, and insights on the future of organizational change management at Johnson Controls. So obviously your perspective on the evolution of OCM over the last decade and more has really been truly eye-opening. Thank you. I'm confident that our listeners will find tremendous value in your insights, and hopefully will feel inspired to apply them in their own change initiatives across the company. Everyone, please do make sure to follow Tim on LinkedIn. I do. The nuggets of knowledge he shares on a regular basis, including his own inspirations and discoveries. There's some AI images. There's images of travels. I remember one when you went on a mountaintop and came back with full of insights. And so your inspirations and your discoveries, they're just always wonderful to read. So thank you for that. We really appreciate you sharing your expertise, obviously, and all of your experiences and your forward thinking. So thank you very much. Thank you.
And Tim, I echo everything Nicole's just said. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on as our guest. Thank you, sir. I know our audience are going to greatly appreciate and really resonate with everything that you've said. So thank you very much, and we look forward to future collaboration with us.
It has absolutely been It has absolutely been my pleasure. And can I tell your listeners thank you?
Of course, please do.
I'm going to tell them thank you 3 ways. First, thank you on behalf of Johnson Controls, because doing change right is going to be one of the most important ways y'all are going to achieve what you set out to achieve. And your listeners are part of doing change right. My second thank you is on behalf of the projects they're each supporting, because they are all working on initiatives and projects and challenges that have real hard nuts and bolts to figure out, but because they're paying attention to the people side of those initiatives, those things are lined up to be more successful. But my last thank you, I think, is actually the most important, and it's a thank you on behalf of Andy, Becky, Charlie, Debbie, the individual human beings that make up Johnson Controls. Because when they walk through the door and they feel like they are being prepared and equipped and supported in times of change, they feel like they're being treated right as part of the organization. So sometimes doing the hard work of change management is thankless, and you don't really get paid back by much more than silence when people are not screaming and shouting. And so I just wanted your folks to know that the organization, the projects, and your people are better off because you all are doing the hard work that you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wonderfully
Join us next
said.
time on the Johnson Controls Organizational Change Management Podcast, where transformation drives results.